Hello, I'm Jack from Shure.
Andy from Yamaha.
And we are going to integrate our AD4Q receiver with our PM5 console. So Andy, first question, Axient Digital top tier touring system. What consoles can we integrate with Axient Digital?
Yeah, well, the whole RIVAGE PM range, which means PM10, PM7, PM5 and the PM3. But also, Axient Digital will work with Yamaha's DM7 series of digital mixers and the CL series and the QL series.
And is the process that we're about to do for this console similar to the other ones?
Mostly.
Okay.
So, especially with DM7 series, that's going to be pretty much the same setup as the RIVAGE PM series. All the RIVAGE PM series will be the same setup, but the CL and the QL series will just differ in one regard, and that's with reference to the sample rate it works at. They work at 48 kilohertz maximum. DM7 and RIVAGE PM series can work at 96 kilohertz, and that's what we're going to be working at today. So sample rate matching is one of the most important parts of the setup process. So Axient Digital can work at 48 or 96 kilohertz, can't it? So you've got to make sure it matches with the mixing desk.
Excellent. So to kick off, I'm going to do the prep on my side that I need to get things into the console. And there's three things really that we need to focus on. The first is my Axient Digital system here. The network switch in the back can be put in two different modes. The factory reset mode, which is where we are now, is split redundant. So the switch will put out Shure control, primary Dante and redundant Dante on separate networks and separate LAN ports on the back of the device.
Okay.
And remember from our first video, the Yamaha consoles want to see the Shure control and the primary Dante in the same network topology.
Yes.
So if we were going to set it up that way, I'd have to have a switch, and I would have to feed my Shure Dante and my Shure control into the same switch within the same IP range for the console to be able to talk to it.
Yeah.
For the purpose of this though, we're going to put it in a slightly easier mode. I can put this unit in what we call switched mode, where primary Dante and Shure control come out of all four of those ports, giving us two IP addresses from one device out of all four ports at the same time.
Yeah. So you only need one cable then.
I only need one cable, makes it nice and easy to set up. So let's do that now. I'm going to go into the device configuration menu. I go down to network configuration. I've then got a setup option on the top here. And as we can see, factory reset is split redundant, and I'm going to put it into switched. The enter button flashes, meaning that this is a hard commit. So when I push this button, the device is going to reboot. Anything Dante running is going to get interrupted. So I want to make sure that I really want to do this. Don't do it in the middle of a show or in the middle of a sound check. Do it at a time that is suitable. The unit will warn me that it's going to cause a device reboot. And then once it's saved, take a few seconds just to reboot. Okay, so our device is rebooted. That's taken me back to the top menu. This brings me to the second important thing that we need to do. Dante runs on something called device names, right? So we're not as worried about the IP address necessarily as we are about the device name, because that's where Dante uses to route its audio back and forth.
Yeah, and in particular, the Yamaha protocol relies on the name beginning with Y0 something something hexadecimal number.
So one of the really useful features that we've put in at our end is a Yamaha preset for our device names. So I'm going to go into the system menu again, go to device configuration, device audio. We'll see we've got a Dante names option here, and I can go to my Dante device name. So we've got a couple of modes. We can just turn it off completely, in which case the self name of the unit is going to get reflected in Dante controller. I can put in a sequential number, which is quite useful if you've got a big old rack of kit and you're, just trying to get a Dante network up and running. Or I can use a Yamaha sequential number, which is what we're going to do today. So as we can see, I get Yamaha mode, gives me a Y00 name. And as this is the second device in my rack, I'm going to go Y002. Again, this is a hard commit because it's going to interrupt the audio when I make this change. It will give me a warning. Dante name change disrupts audio. Press enter. And my Dante device name in the unit is now changed. So one last thing that I'd recommend anybody do before they try and set this up is just confirm that all the network is up and running And for that, we can use Wireless Workbench, which looks at the Shure control side and makes sure that everything is coming in correctly. So I've got my workbench up here. I can use this very quick button to identify all the devices in my rack. I can see that my rack is flashing to show that Shure control is running. And then I can also use Dante controller to see a little bit more information. So a lot of Dante controller is also reflected in this console. That's what we're going to use to make the final patch. But just on Andy's point about sample rate, if I go into my device here, Y002, I go to the device info or the device config, I can see my sample rate is currently set at 96K, and that is what we want for this, right?
Exactly, yes.
Excellent stuff. So I've confirmed my network settings are operating correctly. I've confirmed the device name is correct, and I've confirmed my sample rate is correct, which means that we can now hand over to Andy for the last bit of setup into the console.
Yeah, that's great. So on the console, we also need to think about the Y0 numbering, and we'll get to that in the Dante setup. So in the setup menu, we go to system config, and then we see all the cards that are in the DSP engine here. Now, if you have more than one Dante card, it's very important to choose the one that's in the lowest numbered slot for controlling the Shure devices. So you can have more cards for connecting more devices. We can connect up to 48 different Dante devices, but we can control up to 24 Shure devices, and they have to be controlled from the first Dante card. So I'm using the card in slot 3 for this. The Dante card in slot 4 is typically used for virtual sound check, recording and playback. So we are going to ignore that one for now. So into slot 3. And then here we see the network information, and this is where the IP address here must match those used by your devices. So we're in auto DHCP mode, so you can see 169.254 address. Then we go to Dante setup here, and we have to choose a Dante control ID number, which is really important. And when you choose a number here, you'll see the Dante name begins with Y00, then that number. Now, the number of a Yamaha device can be the same as the number of a Shure device. That's fine if we have two Y001s, Y002s, and so on. You have to make sure that all the devices of the same kind have a different number. So you don't duplicate a number in the Shure devices, and I don't duplicate a number in the types of Yamaha device. So bear that in mind. Also, always make sure you have one console with ID number 1 in your system. That's important because the console with ID 1 will set bit depth, sample rate, and latency for its connected I/O units, Yamaha's own input-output units. So it's like the head device of ID number 1. So if you've only got one console, make sure it's ID 1. Yep. Second point, the secondary port mode for Dante. So we can choose daisy chain or redundant, depending on what kind of network we want to create. Daisy chain is the simplest. Redundant allows for 2 networks for backup. Doesn't matter what we choose here. I'm keeping it on daisy chain just for simplicity, so we can connect one device to this one with just one cable, not necessarily needing a network switch. Then let's briefly talk about the rest of the setup as well, because there is potential for trouble. But things can go wrong.
Yeah.
So Dante patch and Dante name by this console or Dante controller. Choose this console by default, then I can do the Dante patching from here. If I choose patch by Dante controller, I can't do the patch from the console. I have to use the Dante controller software. So it's good to enable that on at least one mixer in your system, but maybe not all of them, to save other people overwriting the settings you've made. Bit depth and latency, of course, have a little impact on the performance of the Dante network, but that won't affect how we're controlling devices. These 2 things can have an impact though. Preferred leader and sync to external. Sync to external is to do with where is your word clock coming from, and that can seriously impact your performance. You've got to get that right. But that, what you do with that is linked with what you do with the word clock. This is seriously important. It takes a little time to work through, but I'm going back to the setup menu and then the word clock menu. Now, if your word clock is running on one of the internal things here, then you need to have that sync in the Dante setup enabled. Okay, so that's synchronizing the Dante network to the Rivage system.
I see.
So the sync for the Dante network is coming from outside of the Dante network. It's coming from our gear. If in your word clock, your clock sync or your clock source is coming from the Dante card, so Dante is providing clock for the Rivage system, then that would be highlighted, and then you would switch sync to external off. The main point to look for is solid blue lights on all of your indicators there, and that shows that you are synchronized and locked. So I'm locked at 96 kilohertz. My Dante network is also at 96 kilohertz. There, solid blue light means you're good.
Fantastic.
So, bit of a lesson, quite a lot to take in, and we haven't got anywhere with controlling the device yet, but that's really important stuff to understand. So back here now, and we are ready to make a connection. So we can control up to 24 devices. I'm already controlling one Yamaha RIO unit, which is in the rack behind you. To find the Shure device that we already have connected to the network, I can just touch one of these blank spaces, and then here's a list of all the potential devices we could control. I'm going to go to the online device list, and this shows me all the devices that are currently in the network. And I can see here Y002 Shure 84. So let's touch that. We see there's a blue name there. Whenever there's a blue device name there, that shows that it is possible for us to control that device. Here's a device identify. If I touch that, we'll see the front panel flashes to show we've got the correct device. So let's touch OK, and then that device is going to mount. We see it says virtual at the moment. If we touch it here, we'll see this changing from synchronizing to controllable. And now we see all the controls available on the screen there. Let's touch for more detail. Now we can see the channel name, we can see the frequency, we can see the RX.Gain, and we can adjust that from these controls down here. We've got mute indicators, we've got the quality control, we've got the RF level, the battery status. So all the important information is available to us on the screen. The only thing perhaps we haven't done is get that information on the actual console channels. So that's the next step. And for that, we have to make an audio patch. So let's go and do that. So we can close that window, and now here in the HY slot system config, we see over here a Dante input patch. But we have to bear in mind there are two stages to the patching we have to do here. There's the Dante patch, and then there's the console patch. So the Dante patch patches from device to device. The console patch connects from the device inputs to the actual mixing channels. So Dante patch, device to device. So we look for the device up here. It's device number 2. Look, Shure 80 there. So we can scroll up and we can scroll along, and then we can start to make a patch there. If I do this, we're going to have a diagonal patch, and that is going to put those 4 microphones into Dante inputs 1 to 4. That's the Dante patch done. The audio is reaching the DSP engine, but it's not on a channel yet. So we've got to do the console patch. Let's go to the patch menu here, and then along the top we can see the Dante cards. HY3 is a Dante card, and there's 144 channels in the Dante card. we are using the first 4 so far, aren't we? So let's scroll along to number 1. Let's scroll up to channel 1, and let's do a diagonal patch of those inputs there. And then on the left by you, channels 1, 2, 3, and 4, we can see that the gain and the battery status has appeared, and the RF. So if I bring those channels here as well, press view, we can see them on the screen there. Press the view again and we see one channel at a time, so we can scroll through the channels and we see the indicators there. If we touch there, we can see all the details in one view, the RX gain, the receiver gain, and the console's own digital gain we can control there. And in this view, we see 4 in a row, but we could go like that for 12 in a row and see all the details in one view like that.
So this is really, really useful. We've got a handheld here, which is synced to the 4th channel of our AD4Q. And if I speak into it, 1, 2, 1, 2, we can see audio is reaching that, but we can see some really useful information. So the battery indicator is obvious. We've also got the RF level. That's how much received signal strength is hitting the antennas at the back of my receiver. Super useful information. But then we've got this quality indicator. And in Axient Digital, that's telling you how much of that RF is good RF. So if there was something else on that channel, a DTV multiplex or another microphone, for example, we see that quality drop off. But potentially the RF level would still be at 100%. So that purple indicator is really important. And the RX gain as well, that's another really important part of this integration, because we can control the gain at the receiver itself, can't we? If you adjust that.
So take it up a few dB.
If I go here, we can see, there we go. The gain moves as you move it there.
Yeah, real-time adjustment.
So we're, from a gain structure perspective, making changes at the very, very top of the audio chain, which is probably the best place that you want to make them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, indeed. And one point about that to bear in mind when you are working is that the RX gain does not get stored in the console scene memories. So you can't change it scene by scene. If you want to make adjustments to the level scene by scene, then use that digital gain that we see here, or that we also see on the selected channel zone there. So the digital gain is part of the console and gets stored and recalled by your scenes. Here's a final tip for you in case you're not seeing the receiver gains in the channel strip. In the console setup menu, open Preferences and look at the Screen Settings tab. Select which gain parameters to see on the overview screen. You should choose either Analog Only, which includes the Shure receiver gains, or Auto, which shows the RX gains beside the D.Gain for other digital inputs.
Excellent. So, quick recap. We need to set up the system, put the network cards in the correct modes, make sure our word clock is correct, make sure our sample rates are correct, do a bit of work on the network sides for both just to ensure everything is seen. And then it's a case of mounting the device, patching the Dante, and then patching the Dante to the console.
That's right, yeah.
Excellent.
Thankfully, all that patching can also be stored.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Andy. Really appreciate your running through that. The next video we're going to look at is SLXD quads with the DM7, which I think is probably going to be quite a similar process. So
it will be, yes.
It'll be a nice one to watch again. And just to recap, that is pretty much the same now for all the PM range, all the DM range. There's the only difference between this and the CL and QL consoles is the sample rate those consoles can work at.
Yeah, that's right. You'll see the same facilities and the same process for the Dante setup on those screens.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, we'll see you on the DM7 video.